Hello everyone, my name's Tom. I'm the marketing manager at DR Wakefield. It's 5 p.m. on a dark, cold London evening, and I'm joined by Kirstin Hill from the Smithsonian Institute. She's the program manager of the Migratory Bird Centre there. Hi Kirstin, how you doing?
Hi there, Tom. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to speak with you.
You too. Thanks for joining us. Where are you joining us from?
Yeah, so I am actually based in Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada.
So it's a little bit colder there than maybe it is here.
Little bit, we've got snow in the forecast today.
Yeah, okay, but you got some sunshine. So what time is it there at the moment?
So for me, it is about 9 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, nice. So we caught up a couple of months ago. We're very excited at DR Wakefield to gain our bird-friendly coffee certification and introduce our first bird-friendly coffees into our range. So being a new thing for me and being a new thing for the team, we thought it'd be good to have a chat about bird-friendly coffee and learn a little bit more about what you do. So maybe we should start a little bit with the Smithsonian Institute and how bird-friendly coffee came to be about. How did coffee in the Smithsonian Institute become a thing?
Yeah, so it's actually a quite a funny journey because we sort of stumbled our way into coffee. So as you mentioned, I work for the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center, which is part of the Smithsonian Institution. We're headquartered in Washington, D.C., and the focus of the Migratory Bird Center is to study and celebrate kind of the grand phenomenon of migration. So what we really focus on is migratory birds, largely in a lot of this work is occurring in, sort of that flyway between North America and South America. And what our scientists noticed in about the 1990s, mid 1990s, was that we started to kind of see a decline in migratory bird populations, which, if you fast forward to, 2019, the 3 billion birds study, we saw that, there was a loss of a really significant amount of migratory birds in North America and birds in general, but migratory birds in particular. About it was 1 in 4 species, or 1 in 4 individuals was lost from that migratory population. But our scientists in the 90s started to notice this, and they started kind of asking questions and looking around to try to figure out what was driving this, this population loss and this decline in migratory birds. And one of the things that they noticed was that it had a lot to do with habitat destruction and sort of the lack of availability of viable habitat, particularly in those overwintering grounds. So for the flyway in the Americas, that's going to be your areas sort of in the tropics in Central and South America after the birds complete their migration journey down into this area. So the scientists were kind of looking around in here and noticed at that time that the coffee plantations that maintained a lot of shade cover over their coffee crop were actually providing really high quality and really valuable habitat for these overwintering migratory birds. So what kind of the center decided from there was to focus on maintaining that habitat within these shaded coffee farms that would allow for a protection of really important habitat for migratory birds. So what they noticed was that the amount of habitat that could be protected through these shade-grown coffee farms was about equal to kind of the undisturbed forest that was in there, which is kind of disappearing quite rapidly. So what we decided to do from there was to create a certification, the Smithsonian Bird Friendly certification, that would really work to preserve high quality habitat. So our scientists kind of studied all the elements of what it meant for this habitat to be really good for birds and good for wildlife and biodiversity overall. And from there, the bird friendly certification was born. So we didn't necessarily go into it as big coffee heads, although a lot of us, I'm still finishing my morning cup here. We just kind of stumbled into it as scientists interested in bird conservation. But since then, for the last 20 years or so, we've been working to protect wildlife habitat and bird habitat on coffee farms in up to 15 different countries now.
Wow. So which countries are these solely in South and Central America, the 15 countries that you work?
Yeah, so the countries in which we work, and I sorry, I misspoke. It's actually 13 different countries.
Okay.
So we have largely in Central and South America. So in many of the more common production countries for coffee, so Guatemala, Colombia, Peru. Lots of different countries in there, but we also have a few outside of that Central and South America region. So we've got coffee production occurring in Thailand, in Ethiopia, and in India as well.
Okay, great. And I'm assuming that the bird species within these different areas are very different to each other as well, but the practices of bird-friendly certification has similarities.
Yeah. So the general qualities of what makes good habitat for birds and other wildlife is there are certainly those common threads, those elements, but some of the things that we focus on for the bird friendly certification are things like planting native trees and including native trees in that habitat. So a native tree in Ethiopia will look different from a native tree in Peru, say, but it's those elements of maintaining that native vegetation that's really good for those local bird populations.
Mm. I think it's very interesting. We'll go a little bit more into like the shade tree aspect of things shortly, I think, because it brings a lot of benefits to the production, but also to the producers themselves and the wildlife around the farms. Recently, it has been the migratory season for birds in Central and South America. Is that right? We are seeing a migration at the moment of birds moving through the Americas.
Yeah. So we're kind of at the very tail end of it now, with most of the birds in North America that are completing that journey south, kind of arriving in their destination in Latin America, and around the world, for that migratory season. So yeah, we're kind of at the tail end of it. Typically, you kind of see the peaks in in kind of the middle of fall and then in the middle of spring as well.
And these are birds traveling south.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
So for
okay.
now, this time of year, they're leaving their breeding grounds in North America. They're heading south down into Central and South America, where they'll remain over the winter. Kind of bulk back up. Get lots to eat. Appreciate everything. All the areas and use the habitat that's down there for them. And then when the seasons start to change again, they will migrate back up to complete that annual cycle back into North America, which is where their breeding grounds are.
Okay. And as maybe like roasters and coffee buyers flock over to kind of Guatemala in the early next year, what kind of birds might we expect to see within shade-grown coffee plantations?
Yeah, so there are lots and lots of different birds that you might see and hear in shade-grown coffee plantations. One of the things that's really neat is if you go into a bird-friendly coffee farm and you close your eyes, it sounds like a forest. So you're hearing lots of different birds. So even if you're not seeing them, you're absolutely hearing them as well. Some of the species that folks might be familiar with are, like the Baltimore Oriole, that brilliant red chest orange chest on the male. You might be, seeing or hearing those birds around. Wood thrush, lots of different species of warbler, lots and lots of birds that you're seeing that are kind of taking advantage of. And now, if you're visiting, this is a great time of year because you're seeing these birds and hearing them, out in full force.
Mm. And would you'd hear them up in America at the same, like early on in the year? So I suppose it must be an interesting experience being. Have you visited coffee farms yourself? Do you know what
I
it
haven't
sounds like
personally
within?
had the opportunity to visit. I've only been in this role for about a year, so
Okay.
pandemic travel restrictions have kind of kept us, a bit in place for now. But yeah, our hope is that we will be able to travel down and see that. But yeah, that's one of the things that I personally find like the most exciting about bird friendly is that you could be sitting out on your back porch or walking through a park here in Canada in the spring and summer months, drinking a cup of your bird friendly coffee, and you could see an individual bird, an individual migratory bird, and that exact individual could be benefiting from the coffee that's in your cup. So that bird, when it comes time to fly down, to the overwintering grounds in Latin America, could be, benefiting and living and resting and feeding on a bird-friendly certified farm. So I think that's a really cool, really unique thing that just doesn't, we don't often have those tangible moments to, the decisions that we make and how they're tied to, environmental protection and conservation, things like that. But that's one that always resonates with me, that, every time I'm drinking my bird-friendly coffee, if I see a bird, I'm like, hey, this cup's for you.
That's really nice. I think you wrote an article for our website a couple of months ago, and one of the stats that really jumped out to me was kind of the monocrop farm versus the bird-friendly shade-grown coffee farm has such a distinct variance of actual bird species that it can support. I think it's maybe 4 times as many on the bird-friendly farm than the monocrop farm. Can you talk a little bit about the kind of the practices involved in bird-friendly coffee production and how they promote such flourishing kind of bird populations around that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the stats that you mentioned come from our fieldwork in Peru that kind of took a look at the different types of ways in which coffee can be grown. So, on one end of the spectrum, you have, a completely clear-cut area where the coffee is grown entirely in the sun, and that can still support some bird species, but it's really just kind of looking like a very pretty barren landscape when you take a look at it. But then when you move all the way through to the bird-friendly standard, it looks and sounds quite like a forest. So as I mentioned, a bit earlier in our conversation, the reason why there are so many bird species that can be supported through bird-friendly certified farms is because this criteria was created by scientists with the goal of conservation in mind. So we set some very rigorous standards when the certification was born, and we're still kind of always looking at and reevaluating to try to make sure that what we're doing is doing the best for biodiversity and conservation and the environment. So those are kind of like the principles through which the bird-friendly program was born, is, conservation first. We want to be, doing and setting these high standards for doing what's best for birds and best for wildlife. So when you look at what those standards entail, that's everything from maintaining an organic certification, so no use of synthetic pesticides and fertilizers, things like that on the farmland. It's actually our baseline criteria and threshold for the bird-friendly program. So whenever folks say, "Hey, my farm might be, I might be interested in becoming certified," that's always the first question that we ask is, "Do you hold an organic cert?" Because we know that can take a little bit of time, and some changes in practices in order to obtain. We also look at things like tree height. So we want to have a minimum canopy height of 12 meters. So having some nice tall trees in there. We want to make sure that most, of the trees that are in there are native tree species. And the reason for that is that the insects and bugs that live and feed in those areas are actually healthier for the birds if they're living on those native trees, because they become more nutrient dense. So it's important that those native trees are kind of that anchor for the farm there. We also look at things like shade cover, of course. So we want to have a minimum of 40% shade cover. So if you picture, you're standing in the middle of the farm and you look up, at least 40% of what you're seeing above you is covered by leaves after pruning season. So lots of good shade that's happening there. We also look for, a diversity of species. So you don't just want to have one tree species that's in there. You want to have, multiple species that are in there to create a nice, healthy ecosystem. And then we have other things we look at, like strata within the canopy. So having different layers of canopy, maintaining things like stumps and snags, areas for the birds to hide, areas for the insects to hide so that the birds can come and, feed on them, things like that. And then lots of other, criteria as well that kind of holistically bring together a really healthy habitat for birds and wildlife.
Wow, it's really in-depth criteria, and having that like organic production as the benchmark, as the kind of the base layer, it means that everything from then on is just geared around quality of environment, but also quality of product, and I assume quality for the producers as well? Because
Yeah.
am I right in assuming that the use of native trees can maybe bring additional income as well alongside the environmental benefits of shade-grown coffee?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just the birds that are benefiting from bird-friendly coffee farming practices. There are lots of ecosystem services that the farmers and producers themselves receive from kind of maintaining this habitat, on their land. So bird-friendly farms tend to be more resilient to climate change. So by maintaining more trees, your soil is locked down a bit more. So that means that you're less susceptible to landslides. The additional shade cover that you receive means that your coffee crop stays a bit cooler. So when you get those big, heat spikes, things like that, you're less likely to lose your crop due to, the coffee burning up and becoming too hot, things like that. You get water filtration services, from the trees that you're maintaining in lots of that filtering that's happening for any water that's kind of running through. So better water quality there within your farm. And generally speaking, the coffee itself tends to taste better. So coffee that's grown under the shade takes a bit of a longer time to ripen. So that tends to result in a richer and more complex flavor as well. So all bird-friendly coffee is specialty coffee grade. So we are kind of meeting that threshold, for farmers, which allows them to kind of often sell their coffee at a higher price.
So symbiotic then. So everything that contributes to the bird-friendly coffee also contributes to the quality of the coffee, the quality of the producers' lives, and then it's kind of a virtuous cycle, I imagine, that when these practices are implemented, it just gets better and better from then on.
Yeah, it becomes a really holistic, environment. Good for birds, good for wildlife, good for people, good for the climate. The trees are all acting as important carbon sinks too, capturing that carbon from the environment and kind of bringing it down into the soil. So it's got a lot of positives associated with it. It is absolutely an investment on the producer's part, though, to maintain those trees and that habitat within their land. And so part of what our job is as the program is to come out and to speak with folks, to let them know about all the great things, that can happen when you choose bird-friendly coffee, whether you're a coffee buyer, or a coffee roaster, a coffee drinker, looking for that bird-friendly logo can really validate and make it, make your coffee choice, at whatever scale you're purchasing, something that you can feel really good about, so that we can make sure that, we're rewarding and supporting those farmers that are doing such great work to maintain that habitat on their land.
And is it quite a if someone isn't quite there as a producer in terms of the height of the trees or the number of native trees or the difference in canopy height, is there like an introduction plan or something that the Bird Friendly Institute helps producers with by implementing bird friendly practices on the farm?
Yeah, so if farms are kind of close but not quite there, we have kind of like a checklist where you can do like a self-assessment to say, okay, I think I'm meeting the criteria here, or here's where we might need a little bit of work. And then we absolutely can offer guidance on what's the best way to kind of get to that threshold to meet the bird-friendly standard. Knowing that our criteria are pretty rigorous, and we consider ourselves to be that gold standard in environmental protection for the coffee realm. So we're always happy to consult with farmers and work with our community of independent auditors to offer those recommendations and associated timelines as well. So for some folks, it's something that could change within 6 months to a year, and then that certification stamp will come through. For others, it might be a little bit longer, depending upon the types of changes that need to occur.
Yeah, cool. And the organic certification requirements, does that go throughout the whole value chain in terms of producer, importer, roaster? Does everyone need to have that organic certification, or is it just the producer side that need that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we currently require our producers to maintain the organic certification so that the bird-friendly coffee production is certified as organic. And then the bird-friendly certification actually follows that organic bill of sale through the supply chain, but we do not require, an independent organic certification from importers, roasters, or retailers. Instead, what we have is a licensing agreement in place with anyone who is kind of transiting bird-friendly coffee or is roasting and selling it at their facility. Where if you're using our label, if you're calling your coffee bird-friendly, then you have to agree to certain handling protocols, which include things like separate roasting, thorough cleaning, separate storage, everything like that, because we do maintain 100% product purity for bird friendly. So that means no mixing or blending is permitted. So any coffee that is bearing that bird friendly label, consumers and coffee drinkers can know that 100% of the beans involved in brewing that cup or that roasting that bag of coffee are grown in a way that is maintaining high quality habitat for birds and other wildlife.
Okay, so then it's accessible to pretty much all roasters out there. If they want to get involved in the bird friendly certificate, they can, whether they're organic certified or not, which I think is really great.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So we've noticed, as you mentioned, climate change a little bit earlier, and we've noticed this recently on trips to Origin, and I imagine agroforestry has probably a big part to play in the fight against climate change. So I'm assuming that bird friendly promotes agroforestry and replanting as like natural practices within the certification. Have you noticed that this is something that has been quite prevalent in the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So bird friendly is an agroforestry growing system. So we are, that marriage of the agriculture and maintaining that habitat in those forests and lands, pretty symbiotically, in my opinion, at least. So so that is something that is we've been hearing kind of pop up more and more, especially as folks kind of become concerned about climate change. I mean, especially when you look at coffee and the threats to coffee production writ large that are emerging and becoming exacerbated due to climate change. That agroforestry systems and these efforts to really create a more resilient landscape are not just good for birds and biodiversity and wildlife, which is our MO, but they're also really, really important for just the longevity of coffee, the quality of coffee, and our ability to continue to grow and enjoy a really good cup of coffee in the long term. So I think that's definitely something folks are becoming more aware of, more concerned about. And one of the things that I think Bird Friendly offers as a certification is it's sort of that third-party verification. There's a lot of claims out there around shade grown, around things that are, sustainable and, environmentally friendly. But unless it's independently verified, by another party, you're kind of just trusting the word of the, whoever it is that's telling you, whether it's, on a coffee package or, somebody that's making that claim. The thing that certifications provide are sort of like the teeth, the verification to that this is something that you can trust because somebody has gone in, looked at it, independently verified it. And so one of the things that is really beneficial for anyone who's looking at wanting to do something that's good for agroforestry or participating in agroforestry, good for the environment, things like that. Those are these certifications that are out there, whether it's bird friendly or organic, they are what's offering that proof, so you can feel good and feel confident in the purchase that you're making.
Mm-hmm. And 2/3 of
Sorry, that was a little bit of a jumbled answer there.
No, that was great. It was good. And I also read that like 2/3 of bird friendly coffee is also fair trade certified as well. Is that right? So you kind of tick in
so
all boxes there, socially, environmentally, with organic, and so I think those certifications really go hand in hand together.
Yeah, so we have about 2/3 of the coffee that's produced is what we call triple certified. So it's organic certified, bird friendly certified, and fair trade certified in some capacity as well.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we're really excited to have it on. It's we've got 2 coffees on our range at the moment at DR Wakefield. One is from the Checovasa cooperative in Peru. Another one is Capucas in Honduras. And I can testify that they are both very tasty coffees as well as being bird-friendly coffees. So yeah, I think this has been really insightful and a really great chat. Have you got anything else that you want to add around bird-friendly coffee to all our roasters out there in the UK and the EU?
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure to to chat with you today. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit more about bird friendly, and I appreciate the plug there. That the coffee itself does taste good, because we know that at the end of the day, it could be the best coffee in the world for wildlife, but if it doesn't taste good, folks aren't going to drink it. So that is one of the things that we really pride ourselves in, is it's a really good, high quality cup of specialty coffee as well. So lots of benefits there. We're excited about the opportunity to reach more roasters. And yeah, if folks have questions about the Bird Friendly program, feel free to drop us a line. You can always reach us at birdfriendly@si.edu.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much, Kirstin. It's great to chat to you, and I'm sure that we'll be speaking more in the future.
Sounds good. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Cheers. Bye.